Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Thunderstruck. As always, my name is Jake Ricker, and alongside me is my co host, Michael Wax. Michael, today we have a very special guest who is returning with us to the Bolt Report channel. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me and welcome the Lightning's head athletic trainer for 22 seasons, a three-time Stanley Cup champion, and a member of Team USA in the 2014 Olympics. Please welcome Tom Mulligan. Tom, thank you so much for joining us today here on this episode of Thunderstruck.
Oh, thanks, Jake. When you put it that way, it makes me feel old when you say it's been 22 years.
Hey, 22 years of amazing seasons, though. So we've loved every second of it. We want to kind of talk to you about this season, but we want to start going back a couple of years because a lot happened since the last time that we had you
Yeah.
on the show. So going back a few years to the bubble as the head athletic trainer, what was kind of your day to day during that time?
Wow. Well, pretty much from, I would say it was about March 11th of 2020 there when we shut down. I think it was the 11th or 12th. I think we were playing Philly that night and league shut down. Um, for a couple of years there, my role really significantly changed. I still did my normal day-to-day operations as the athletic trainer and kind of overseeing our medical side of things with the organization, but took on the added role of kind of our COVID compliance officer and really had to focus on the protocols that the league had in place and everything from generating the protocols when the league started having discussions in May of that year of how to figure out pulling together a postseason tournament, um, trying to get to the point where we would be able to pull it off, protocols that each club would have to face in their cities, and every team had somebody that was kind of a pointer in that role. And for us here in Tampa, it was myself. Um, fortunate, Fortunately for me, I had an awesome staff. Mike Poirier is my assistant. Christian Rivas, our manual therapist. Brandon Rogers at the time was our PT. Also acted as an assistant athletic trainer, and they were able to take on a lot more of the day to day treatment rehab type stuff, and allowed me to focus on the kind of the COVID compliance. And it started in June of that year when we started with some small group sessions. I think at the time we probably were first only allowed to have either 4 or 6 players come in at a time. After every session that those guys would come in, whether it was on ice or off ice, we had to fully clean the facility. You had to clear everybody out. You had to have different staff involved, so there was no cross contamination potentially. And then obviously the biggest thing was the daily testing. We tested daily for COVID, probably from June of that year until we left the bubble on October 1st. So it was it was different. It was a different perspective on things. It was challenging. Um, as the compliance officer, that I was kind of the bad guy with, make sure you're wearing your mask and no, you can't go to that restaurant, and different things, trying to enforce it with the players. So I say they used to like me, but over that time they kind of got annoyed with me.
So far as I know you mentioned having 4 to 6 players on the ice at a time, but as far as treating players with stuff that had to do with rehab or getting them on the ice, what changed specifically with either you or the rest of the medical team while treating these players at that time?
I mean, I guess the only real thing that changed is we were masked. But as far as hands-on treatment, that didn't change. Obviously, anybody that came into the facility had to have a negative COVID test. So, like I said, we were tested every day and we couldn't enter until you got the results, uh, temperature checks and that type of thing. But once we were inside in those groups, it was business as usual, other than, like I said, on the medical side, it was still, same hands-on treatment. We were masked, we did have to follow some other, distancing with, player to player interaction or staff to staff, a little bit more. We had to space out their locker stalls, treatment tables, things like that. But it's actual hands-on treatment. It was business as usual. Um, and that was pre-bubble, before we actually left and went up to Toronto to start. Once we got up there, when you were in the bubble, that was pretty much under the control of the league. They did an unreal job of being able to pull that off. Being gone for 2 months and just getting through that for the league without any positive tests was remarkable, to be honest with you. And they did an awesome job pulling it together.
One of the big stories in that run that year was Steven Stamkos, who suffered a injury early and kept him out for basically the entirety of the playoffs. He got to come back for that one game. How difficult was it dealing with, making sure Stamkos was 100% healthy and able to come back, and wanting to have the captain back in such a big moment during the finals?
Yeah, that was something unexpected that popped up before we left. Once we got back playing, or practicing, I should say, before we left, he had that abdominal issue creep in, and we tried to treat it. We tried it, threw everything at it that we possibly could. We knew eventually he was likely going to need surgery, but timing of it, we were in the run, we were in the bubble. Like I said, we wanted to do everything we could. He wanted to do everything he could. He worked his butt off, like he really did. He worked so hard just to get back to play in that one game against Dallas. I want to say, going back to maybe the Islanders series, there was a chance he was going to come back, had a little setback in practice. So we knew it wasn't going to be 100%, obviously. And we went into that in the finals against Dallas, knowing that, it could be one shift or one period, one game. We didn't know what we were going to get out of him. He knew that. Coaches knew that. Management knew it. But you want to have him out there if you can. And we did get that one period and that one huge shift where he scored. And that was one of the coolest moments I've been a part of in my career here. And seeing just the true excitement and joy, not only from him, but from everybody on our bench. It was so cool to see him score that goal. And not knowing that on the same play that he scored the goal, he actually re-injured himself. It wasn't until he came back to the bench after celebrating that he turned around and let me know that things weren't right, and I probably wasn't going to be able to finish. So that was it. But it was a really cool experience, and disappointed that he wasn't able to play more during that run, obviously. But just his presence in the locker room with our guys in the bubble in the hotel, and that was worth its weight in gold and or silver, Stanley silver, I should say, I guess. But yeah, he was a special person for sure.
So talking about the goal, and then when he tells you that something doesn't feel right, can you kind of take me through what's going through your head? You mentioned, the goal was huge. I remember covering it here on social media. Everybody was so excited for him. What goes through your head on that quick change of, wow, he just scored in this amazing goal, to he's now telling you something doesn't feel right in this game, in a huge game for the Lightning?
That moment, you're hoping maybe, he just, separated some scar tissue, or just a little hiccup, but you're also thinking the worst and what potentially could happen, and that he may not be able to continue playing. But until you actually get him back in the room and get your hands on it and you're able to evaluate it, you don't know. So, there's different scenarios. And with any injury, and if a player tells you, something on the bench, you start going through the different potential scenarios in your head of what it could be and what your next steps will be. So, that's kind of, where I was at personally, in my head. But like I said, we all knew that we weren't sure how much we were going to get, because we knew this wasn't 100%.
You talked about that goal and him, saying that something's wrong and what's going through your head. But when you're back during intermission, seeing what's wrong with them, diagnosing something, how do you manage treatment and recovery for a new injury like that, while also being conscious of the prior injury that he was dealing with?
Well, in that case, obviously, we knew it was basically just an exacerbation of what he already had. So, we knew what we were dealing with. And, initially you just try to with any injury, you try to treat any pain or inflammation initially and try to make them comfortable, and then you start your recovery process. And I think we knew at that time that like I said, going into it, we anticipated he was going to eventually need something surgical to correct the problem, and this kind of just cemented that in our heads, in his head, and we knew at that point that he wasn't going to be able to continue playing, and we were going to have to wait till we finished up, hopefully at the end of a playoff run and the Stanley Cup run and parades, and get this fixed.
So the Lightning, obviously, as we mentioned, ultimately go on to win the Stanley Cup. It was such a big win, as we've talked about on this channel, for a number of reasons, being in the bubble, the sweep just the year before in 2019, and then the story with Steven Stamkos. What does that championship win mean to you?
Oh, wow. So that, that one there obviously has a special meaning, and professionally, just going through being fortunate to win in 04, and then those years following that from 04 to 2020, where we had some tough years and we were at the bottom of the league and battled our way up, and then had some other great runs in 2011 and 15, 16, 18, and then obviously 2019 you fall short when you think, hey, this is our year. You win 62 games in the regular season and then get swept. And so professionally, it all comes together, and you're like, okay, we finally did it. We get over the hump, and it's special in that way, in that where you came from, and you think of what it took to get there and how difficult it truly is to win. Personally, for me, as family wise, in 04, Tyler was just over a year old, and Zach hadn't been born yet, and Abby hadn't been born yet, and you go through the years to get to 2020, and you're from a family standpoint, the sacrifices that they make for me being gone and traveling half the year, and missing out on family events and games and school events, just to have them be able to experience it and experience the the excitement of winning and the parade, and everything that goes along with it, and spending a day with the cup. And so personally, that that has that satisfaction there as well.
Well, we see the 3 replica Stanley Cups behind you.
Yeah.
Just going from the 2020 season to 2021, going back to back, how different was winning the cup in that environment than it was in the season before?
So obviously the most obvious one is just having fans in the building. Winning it at home, winning it in our building with our fans, going back to the family, having family there the night that we won, being in our locker room, and that's the biggest difference, obviously. And like I've told people that I'm so fortunate to win all 3 of those, and honestly, everyone is a different story. Everyone, and people have asked which one is means the most, and it may be cliche, but truly each one is different. 04, it's the first time I was able to achieve something like that and win at that level, and from that point forward, my name would always be on the cup. And then you fast forward, like I gave the reasons, in 2020, and family can celebrate with you, but they weren't actually there. They weren't able to be a part of actually winning. In 2021, then they were. They were there the night we won, and so each story is different and special in its own way.
Well, and of course, for the Lightning, not only they go back to back, but it wasn't without adversity, as Nikita Kucherov started suffering injuries as he missed that entire season, was able to come back for the postseason and had an unreal postseason as well. When did you find out about that Nikita Kucherov injury?
So that was just a couple of weeks before we started. If you recall, that year we didn't open camp until January. It was early January that we started, and after we won in 2020, most of the guys had October was kind of downtime, and November started ramping things up. It was really short off season, obviously. Then we got into December, and it was just before Christmas. He started having an issue with his adductor in his abdominal area, and actually no, that was the hip surgery that he had that year. So that was going into that training camp. His hip was bothering. We investigated it, and it was a situation where, you try to make the decision with the physicians, the player, the organization, that okay, what's best for him at this point. You try to manage this through a shortened season and see how we do, or do you shut him down and get this fixed. And we at the time were kind of anticipating it would have been middle of May, late May, that he would have been cleared to play. But to no surprise of a lot of people, the work he puts in, and just the detail that he's focused on, he was able to get himself ready right at the start of the playoffs. And then obviously timing worked out amazing for us. It wasn't something we planned on, but there are a lot of eyebrows raised, obviously, based on the timing. But he definitely exceeded the expectations of the physicians that kind of made that early projection of when he would return. So it was, like I said, it was just before Christmas, before training camp started that year, where we knew this was going to be a problem.
So he's not the only one that seems to have a superhuman healing ability, as we've noted this season with Andre Vasilevsky. But during the Finding Perspectives Raw Charge episode, Mike Poirier, who you talked about already, he detailed the really strict four-step plan that Vasi was going through his recovery. What how does the medical team really try to rein back a player when they believe that they're
Yeah,
ready for the next step?
yeah, that's the challenging part, because you really have to drive home the point to them that you may feel great, but the body still has to heal. Like um, you can only fool it so much, and if you do too much, you do too much too soon, you're going to set yourself back. You're going to potentially have another surgery. You're not going to be as strong in the long run. And that's a challenge. And sometimes you have to be brutally honest and say, listen, if you do this, this is a potential risk. And with Vasi, that we had those conversations sometimes. And you know he has that same type of mentality as Cooch, and that they want to continue to do more. And every day, I want to do more, I want to do more. And that's why with him, we really had to lay out, as Mike kind of detailed there, we really had to lay out a different phased progression, and put some time frames on it. Obviously, the physician is at the top of that pyramid with what he'll allow the patient to do, based on the surgery that was performed. So having the physician support is huge on our end. And it's a little easier to go to the player and say, I know you want to do this, I know you feel like you can do this, but these are the doctor's orders. They don't always agree with it, but it's nice having that support. And our medical team, from all of our physicians, are unreal with that. And so that's kind of how we had to handle Vasi, and just having that staged progression, and really spelling it out for him so he could see where we were going to go with this progression was helpful.
Unfortunately, you've had to do a lot of different work this year. The Lightning have been dealing with a lot of different injuries. Looking at it from the guys who are coming up, though, from their perspective, what is your message to these guys entering the NHL for the first time when they're coming up for a injured player? What's your message to them when they're first joining the NHL?
Well, it starts back in training camp and even development camp, when we have our prospects come in the summer. And one of the things we stress from the medical side and our performance side of things is open communication. Really, open lines of communication. We have a meeting right from the start with the younger kids, and like, I'm not sure what experiences you've had, whether it's with your junior team or college team, as far as injuries and being open about them. But the sooner you tell us something, the sooner we can help you. And just because you tell us, hey, this is nagging me a little bit, doesn't mean we're going to pull you out of the lineup or you're going to be sent back down. And it just gives us an opportunity to potentially address something early on. And that's a message we try to send, from the medical standpoint about when a player comes up. And like I said, it starts right when we first get them, and in camps. And then when they do come up to us, we're in constant communication with our staff in Syracuse. I'm on the phone with Brad, our head athletic trainer in Syracuse, probably 3 or 4 times a week, text message almost every day. We email reports back and forth throughout the week. So you have an idea, exactly what the injuries those guys have had coming up with, what if they have anything nagging now, and then vice versa when a player gets, reassigned, we have that communication. So that's a huge part. Don't hide it, don't try to hide anything, because if you do, your performance is probably going to suffer and the coaches are just going to think you're not playing well. Versus, hey, he's not playing well because he's got this issue, and let's address it. And then from not necessarily the medical side, but I personally, I tell the guys before they get a first game that you only get one first game. Enjoy it. You're in the National Hockey League now, and no one will ever take that away from you.
It really seems like a lot of these young guys have embraced that too, as they've been playing extremely well. And it's been great for the Bolts to have these great prospects. All right. So one more thing that we've got for you. It's something new we started doing with all of our guests, and we didn't get to do it with you last time. So we're doing it this time. It's called the Bolt Reports Lightning Minute. So I got a couple of just fun rapid fire questions for you. I'll send them off to you. Let me know what you got. You ready to go?
Let's go for it.
All right, let's do it. All right. So your favorite place to eat in Tampa?
Ooh, favorite place to eat in Tampa. That's a good one. I would say I've always liked Stonewood up here in New Tampa.
Favorite sporting event that you've ever attended as a fan?
As a fan, when I was at the Olympics, going to other, just seeing the other events that were non-hockey related. That was really cool.
All right, so you've been to many different arenas, obviously, over the years. What is your favorite arena to go on the road?
Favorite arena is probably Montreal. Just the environment in there. It's awesome from start to finish. But it's really cool, just the history in that building, and the passion of the fans.
Favorite off-day hobby when you're not working for the team?
Probably following my kids around doing something.
All right, last one here. What is the hardest injury to treat?
Concussion. Unpredictable. You never know what what the injuries, how it's going to progress. It's not anything that you can see and actually test, and it's not black and white.
Well, Tom, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for joining us and doing another episode for us. We really appreciate you coming on.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. You're doing a great job, and best of luck to you.
Thank you. If you guys enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit that like button and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos just like this one. And we'll talk to you guys next time. Go Bolts.